Welcome in, folks, to the first ever Esports Podcast. It is May 18th, about 8 o'clock, or May 19th, actually. But we are here with the first episode of the Esports Podcast. I'm Chris Kidlick with Okamura, and I'm here with Caleb, Cable, SC, Finn, and I have Dylan Pepidus Hornibrook. And so, guys, we're going to go ahead and dip into some topics here. How are y'all doing, first of all?
Doing great.
Doing pretty well.
Awesome, guys. So this week we had a sort of drama happening for the League of Legends scene with the CLG stuff. Cable, some thoughts on what happened there, or your mindset on it?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know if I would call it fully a rage quit, but it's definitely a long-winded exit. He kind of went over all the history of him with League of Legends and his history, and then his history with CLG, and he even brought in some very specifics. I thought it was actually very educational, very good insider's perspective in the past 3-4 years of League of Legends professional scene. But obviously any one person's position is going to be slanted. That said, all the details that he gave and the perspectives and the context, I thought it was really good. He has his perspective, and there's reasons why he's leaving. I'm kind of scrolling through it now, but I thought it was very interesting. Whether you say he burned all of his bridges in doing this on exiting, and if he'll ever be able to, get back into professional league, I think that's a massive overstatement. I think, if anything, this is going to polarize people against him or for him. Some people are going to hate him for doing this, and how dare you call me out? You're an idiot. I'm never going to work with you again. But then a whole nother set of people is going to respect him for the things that he said, his, not professionalism, but his perspectives, and, capitalize on. What you take away from this is you can take away Link's strengths as a person and his weaknesses as a person, as well as the things that he identifies in the other people as being strengths and weaknesses. If you're a smart team leader, a smart businessman, you can then capitalize on Link's strengths that you see here, fold him into some other different project, and voila, you're going to do great. But at this point, I don't know. I think he's just taking a break right now, right?
Yeah, I think he's just taking a break. Dylan, so Cable kind of went over the responses there. I agree with most of what he said, but what about the backlash? We got a whole bunch of responses from former players, teammates, a whole bunch of people involved with CLG. What do you think?
So it was really interesting. I wasn't really expecting as many people to chime in as they did. I kind of expected people to, do the one sentence brush off and just leave it at that. But everybody and their mother kind of came into this thing and decided to put their own spin down. So we had Chowster chime in. We had Double chime in. Did we have George chime in? I think.
Yeah, we have Double Lift, Chowster, Hotshot. Monty tweeted it a little bit. Skara talked about it on his stream. Nien tweeted about it, and even Elements for some reason. That was the weird part where Elements started coming into it.
Oh god. So yeah, everybody kind of chimed in, and this is kind of what we're getting at in just showing League as its infancy as far as we go with organizations. And I'm actually going to take off my glasses here because I'm getting a lot of glare. So when you have sports teams, and I'm just drawing because this is, the best example of what we could see going forward here, is the fact that with sports teams, they have PR, PAC divisions. Their job is when something raises a fire, they quell it fast. They make sure the team, as they respond, that there's, a tone that everybody goes with. That doesn't really happen here. There's no PAC, PR control. So there's no one person saying, okay, Double, you match with Hotshot, you match with the other alumnus we have coming out. So reaching out to a Charlester saying, this is the tone we're going with. So everybody creates their own tone, and, it makes this nice drama that everybody loves to follow. And it was very interesting to see who came out as the heroes and who semi came out as the villains. And really, I don't think either, because really there are two camps that kind of went off on this. There's the Link camp and the Double camp. The person who came out ahead, I think, is Nien. Out of all of this, the hero is Nien here, who now gets picked up by Team 8. Now everybody's like, oh yeah, Nien, the super positive guy. that, Doublelift kind of quit on, and, nothing went right for him on the team, but everybody's like, yay, positive on Double. And heck, even Chowster gets another minute back in the spotlight. Not that I think, people have forgotten Chowster, but I mean, he's definitely not in the public eye the same way he used to be back when CLG and TSM were the two biggest names in the world. That's another thing that I think this whole entire sequence kind of brought back, was the point in time of these letters is so long. Link really took this all the way back to the beginning, and Chowster even went a step further, and you start piecing together this whole entire tapestry of what is CLG, what has made CLG, who's been on and did things with CLG, and it was very interesting, because it's a lot of stuff that kind of gets swept behind the personal curtain for people that aren't actively, watching the player streams every single night. So it was kind of nice to see from a fan perspective, but from a team and organization perspective, this is about the worst thing you could have going into a split, especially considering that you're now doing big roster changes and a big coaching change. Which do we know who their coach is yet?
I don't think they've openly confirmed it. I've heard rumors, but I don't think they've openly confirmed who their new coach is.
Yeah, so with all of that going on, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do, especially from the coaching and managerial side. Because a lot of what got brought up here was, it was never the right coach or the right coaching type to get the most out of the players.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Scara really goes into on his Twitch channel, where he was going on about his situation with CLG and how he just wasn't the right type of coach,
right.
and how Monty was kind of going on that as well. But the thing that I wanted to put on, I mean, honestly, the thing I want to talk about that you brought up was sort of we got more information about CLG, the history of CLG here, than the documentary that CLG made about CLG. We got so much information. And I think it's a lot to digest, and I think it's something that I've kind of gone through and gone back over a couple of times in the past couple of days. And the more I go through it, the more I'm sort of losing track of what is relevant information. Just because it started with Link talking about his time with CLG, and then Chowster going back and contrasting it between his time and the current time, or what he sees as the current time. And I think there's a little bit of a disconnect, just because we have players talking about different eras in the team and different times where they weren't there for the entire thing. The one person that I really wanted to hear from that I didn't, that no one's really talked to or heard about it is Kelby. Because Kelby was with CLG for pretty much the entire, he's been there a long time, and he's probably known all the players and sort of the ins and outs of that organization and then the relationships better than anyone, and probably has formed a non-biased opinion, having to be a manager and a team leader or coach in that aspect.
Yeah, but you know
what?
Really
he can be non-biased though. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you take things with, as unbiased as you can possibly take it. I mean, we've only heard from players at this point, and the only two coaches we've heard from were Monte Cristo and Scara, who both had a lot of things said about them in the letters and the responses. And so, I think no one ever has anything bad to say about Kelby in those letters, and I think Kelby's a great guy. I've gotten to know him pretty well. And from my perspective, I think that he would have the most unbiased opinion you could possibly have on the matter. But the thing that I really wanted to touch on, guys, is where this is sort of something we don't see in regular sports. This is something that doesn't really come up, at least to this extent, where people are calling each other out and trying to defend and pointing the blame and everything like that. That doesn't really happen in mainstream sports.
It does.
It does, but not to this extent where you're getting 20-page letters of extreme detail going into what's happening.
There's a few reasons for that. Number one is that professional sports players have a lot better things to do with their time than write 15-page treatises on everybody and everyone around them, right? Their time is worth so much money, and they have so much money that they can just hire somebody else to write everything for them that they need to write, right? And that's the other thing, is that professional sports has so much money behind it that every sports player has a lawyer. He has his own lawyer besides the team lawyer. And so all of this stuff is fed through lawyers before it goes anywhere. I mean, we've seen professional sports players get in massive trouble from their tweets. Just a single tweet, right?
Yeah.
And in massive trouble. It causes tons of fires, and lawyers get involved. And when you have that much money on the line, you're a lot more careful with what you say, and what you say is curtailed a lot more.
Yeah, and let's be honest here. A lot of what Link was able to say and why he said it is the fact that he's taking a break now. If he was actively searching to be on another team or to be shopped around, he would say nothing. Because essentially what you've said now is if you bring me onto your team, this could happen to you if I leave the team under bad circumstances, that I'm someone who talks.
Sure.
And that's, what every sports agent absolutely abhors, is if you ruin the player's market value by the player being stupid, then that's essentially money out of that agent's pocket and that player's pocket. They don't do that. They're money wise, and they know, you keep everything under tight. Also, NDAs are a thing in professional sports.
I was going to say gag orders, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know how many NDAs are truthfully signed in the esports arena. I would love to know, but I can imagine there are some teams that have them. I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine which ones, like off the top of my head. But I don't know truthfully how prolific they are or how ironclad they are. Because let's remember, not every NDA is created equal.
Yeah, I would imagine that the NDAs that these guys have are about like intellectual property and like strategies and about in-game kind of stuff that's going to win them games. But I don't know if the wording extends to not disclosing personal matters or not disclosing internal team dynamics. One could argue that those things definitely do affect the team performance, and they are a part of the team, entity, the team business. But I don't know that the NDAs that I've seen going around in esports cover that kind of stuff. And let's again be real about what an NDA is, right? An NDA is if you disclose something, then someone will come back and sue you for the value that you took away from whatever it was that you disclosed, right? So how much money is there in esports? Is it really worth ever pursuing anyone over an NDA in esports? Like, no, you're going to spend more time pursuing them than it is worth. So an NDA is only as good as the word of the person who's signing it right now, until there's more money on the line and lawyers can actually enforce things and get real monetary value back.
Yep.
Very true. Now, most of this stuff really happens. All this relationship kind of stuff happens just because these guys are, not for the most part, but they're spending so much time with each other, right? They're literally with each other 24/7. So is that, and we're starting to see the sort of negative effects of the team house mentality that we're having in North America right now. Hasn't really happened too much in Korea as far as we know, but then again, Koreans are very sort of tight-lipped about personal matters and things like that.
Oh, it's definitely happened in Korea. We saw it even with Starcraft, right? When players left and they were finally able to talk about their time in their houses, they're like, it was a slave house. I hated it, right? You had to do everything, and if you were the lowest skilled player, you had to do all the garbage and do all the dishes, and they slave drove you. So it's been around in Korea for a long time. I mean, those people stuff 4 people in a bedroom.
It's kind of ridiculous. But
a North American team house is a mansion in comparison to anything in Korea.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. But I mean, we see now with what Team Liquid's doing now that they have the sort of office hours, an office building where they go play every day, and then they come back to the team house, where it's a little more relaxed, a little more chill. And I know they're working on maybe trying to get each player their own apartment or helping them fund for that, and putting them up in their own separate places. Is that sort of the model moving forward? I mean, I know that's something. How does this light a fire under the teams to say, like, yes, this is something that we have to push for to sort of get our guys away from each other, to help with team chemistry, get them away from each other?
I mean, for me, it's not the living situation here that this kind of sheds a light as to being the problem. For me, it's the management and the coaching that needs to be here. And I think, we all saw the list that Hotshot put out when they went for a new coach. And, one of the things is, coaching experience, 25 years or older. And I think that's what's really missing, is that these guys need someone who is older than them. Someone that, even on a pseudo-psychological level, that they automatically just respect due to age. someone you can say, okay, he's older, he's been through experiences. I need to listen to him when he tells me about living life. Now, this is not, your analyst. This does not need to be the guy that's going to go in and tell you how to run your game, how to do your pick ban strategies. This needs to be someone who tells you, this is how you interact with people. This is how you respond to adversity in a situation. If these guys were going into an office environment, this would be a supervisor, this would be a boss, and ideally it would be a good one. I mean, there are bad bosses and there are good bosses. But ideally, they'd have someone directing them on, this is how you work with people on a team basis. These are guys that haven't been in a work environment. And a lot of these guys weren't in, long-term sporting teams when they were going through middle school, high school, which is where you develop a lot of these social skills about, teamwork, team orientation, following a lead. A lot of these key concepts that come with teamwork are built in sports when you're younger, and we haven't really built the esports scene to build that in at a very young age yet. So I look for these teams to really start bringing on managers of people rather than managers of strategy, which is what we've done so far.
Yeah, well, keep going.
Okay, a lot of teams have hired great managers of strategy. Charlie, great manager of strategy. A lot of the other guys whose names aren't coming to mind quickly are great managers of strategy. Even is it Daylor, the coach for Fnatic?
Yes, I want to say yes.
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure. It's something to that effect.
Yeah. He's actually a great mastermind. He teaches them how to play psychological games with their opponents, which is fantastic. You take a poker pro and teach LoL players a lot of the things you can learn from poker. It's great. But I still think, next level, you still need a life coach. And when the life coaches come in, I think that's when you're going to start seeing a lot healthier team mindsets and actually a lot better team play, especially from these North American teams. Because we lock them up together and we don't really teach them how to live together, and that's a fallacy.
I was thinking a very similar thing, that like people who play, let's just take North American football for instance. People who play football grow up in Little League football, right, and then in high school football, and then they go to college football, whatever. If they skip college, who cares? But the point is that they learn discipline. They learn how to shut up and do whatever the coach says, no matter what it is, right? Because you have no choice. This guy owns you. You are literally on or off the team, depending on what you do, right? And this can be a decision you make in the classroom that has nothing to do with the game. This can be a decision that you make with a teammate that has nothing to do with the game. Or this can be something that you did on field. But in esports, we take all these people who are, they're self-built, right? They build themselves from nothing in order to get known in the scene, in order to make friends in the scene with the other people who are up at the top. They build themselves up in solo queue. And then we inject them into this team environment, and they just do whatever the heck they want, right? They have no hierarchy. They have no camaraderie, or they have no respect for discipline. The only people that they respect are the guy who pays their checks, and the guy who pays their checks doesn't have the time to manage their lives and to also know strategy, right? So I was definitely thinking something very similar. It's something that I'm running into a lot in esports these days, is that like most of these people, no matter what sector of esports you're in, have never held a normal job because they're coming straight out of high school or straight out of college. They have no understanding of business. They have no understanding of hierarchy. They have no understanding of teamwork or how team projects go, besides that, senior project they did in high school. And that was just a bunch of egos coming together and somehow melding to bring something out of it. Unless they've been part of a team growing up. Okay, here's an interesting example. Robert, was it, the guy, the one-off kid for Team Liquid. What was his name?
Ooh.
He played the very first game of the split last time.
Oh, Keith McBride.
Keith McBride.
Okay, he's a master success, right? Just real quick comes out. You know why? Because he's been in wrestling in all of high school, and he understands team dynamics. He understands coaching. He understands sports. So a lot of these players that we've seen who actually did do real sports in college or high school, middle school, elementary school, they come out being better prepared for this.
Yeah, and I think that you can say the same thing about like Saint Vicious. Saint Vicious was in the military, man. Like that guy, like you come with the discipline, you come with the mentality of like I have a job to do. I think the problem is again making sure that they know that this is a job, this is something that they have to work at, that they have to sort of there's a goal to work towards. That you're getting paid not just to play games, you're getting paid to do a job and to do a task.
Yeah, and I mean this is one of the things that I love about looking at the teams from LPL and the LCK. You look at SKT, every player on SKT respects Coma to death.
Yes, they do.
Because even Faker, if Coma does not believe in Faker, Easy Hoon is in on Coma's whim.
Mm-hmm.
So they know, hey, if I'm not listening to Coma, I don't play. And that works.
And I think that goes back to sort of the idea that you're bringing up that, if you're on a high school football team, if you don't listen to the coach, there's someone to replace you. And I think that's where the substitution systems that we're starting to finally get into the LCS and getting into sort of League of Legends play is getting extremely important. As soon as you have someone behind you pushing you, that's going to push you to work harder. As soon as you're not in that starting lineup anymore, that's going to hurt your pride, and you're going to want that back, and that's going to push you.
Yeah, and also there's monetary consequences, right? I'm pretty sure that in most real professional team sports, if you're a starter and you get benched from starting, you actually take a cut of your check for every game that you don't start anymore.
Yep.
And so, if that starts coming in again into esports, oh, holy crap, these guys are they're gonna want to start every game because they need every paycheck. They want the money. Money drives the world as much as we, passion and money. But one other thing, you had mentioned something about, professional and this is a job and, it's not all about just coming in and having fun. But it was another thing I noticed about Link's letter is that it seemed that and my experience with the kind of underground, pre-pro AMs or pre-professionals is that these guys all get together. The way they learn to play as good as they do, a lot of them, is by playing fives with their buddies, right? And them and all their buddies, they just have fun. They screw around. They learn, try new strategies. They mess around with masteries for 3-4 hours after the other guys go to sleep. And that's what Link said he did. And I do feel like that's something that may be missing in pro league and even, pro other esports is this fun aspect. If you take, a lot of NFL players, they still have fun playing the game because they just love the game. And it's a lot of times when you take that fun of the game, that love of the game, when you take it away, people's passions die and their skills die as a result.
Sure. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. And it's something that I've run into, being a manager and sort of working with teams. It's something that I've run into and run into myself just, I don't want to sit there and watch 8 hours of League of Legends and break down and write down all these notes and take stats and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to do it, but I do it because I'm passionate about it, and I do it because I love it. And I know not everyone has sort of that willpower to push on, but it's something that we have to, when you come into a team sort of atmosphere, you have to sort of understand that this is what's going to be. And I think it's shocking to a lot of players to see they come in with a certain mentality of this is gonna be fun. We play to League of Legends. This is my job now. This is cool. And they come in and it's not what they expect. And I think that's where we're getting a lot of the problems too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back on the sort of manager thing, I think honestly for a lot of League of Legends teams, or just teams in general, it has to move towards sort of like a 3-man, at least a minimum of 3-man staff, where you have an analyst that's taking the data, that's breaking it down. You have a coach that's implementing that data, that's going ahead and coming up with the strategies and figuring everything out. And then you have a team manager that kind of runs the house and just manages the players. And those three working in synchronous together, sort of, and having that synergy is going to make that team a whole bunch better.
And that coach needs to have that absolute authority that we talked about, right? He needs to have the authority to last minute, 10 minutes before the game, cut a player because the player's got a horrible attitude and he recognizes that it's going to bring the game down, right? And everybody has to listen. And the owners have to fully trust their staff, right? So if the manager makes a call, the coach makes a call and the owner comes in and undercuts him and says, oh no, that's our star player, we want him starting, blah, blah, blah. If the owner doesn't have full implicit trust in his 3 staff members, then there's also going to be problems, right? And then you play these bias games, you play these favoritism games where this guy's buddies with this and that guy's buddies with that, right? So yeah, I think the coach is the most pivotal, but the house manager is also necessary, like we talked about earlier.
Right, and this actually brings up someone on Reddit actually made a very good point. When we're looking at a team size of 5, is very different from, say, soccer or American football, where your team size is 11, where each person's role and effect on the team is a little bit smaller. In the NBA, you actually do have players that have such a large impact on their teams that they can guide decisions on who's their coach.
Sure.
And in the NBA, it's actually a lot harder to find teams that are really controlled by the coach as controlled by owners and the players that are there. So finding that correct balance where the coach really is the lead is going to be very difficult.
Sure. And I think the NBA I think the NBA is sort of the best parallel we can get in terms of for League of Legends in particular. I think Charles Barkley talked about this for a while, that the NBA is getting too young. That the NBA, the oldest player on an NBA roster is probably going to be, 27, 26. When Charles Barkley came into the league, he was, 21 years old, came into the league. He had a, 30-something-year-old Julius Erving there to teach him how to wear a suit. And he talked about how he took him shopping and taught him how to wear suits to the airport and, taught him, how to act and how to be a professional. And then I think that's something we're missing. And of course, the esports scene hasn't been around long enough to sort of build that culture. But I mean, just bringing someone in that's older, even if they don't know the esports scene, just having someone older there to teach life lessons, just general things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost love every team to have like a mandated 30-year-old who just sits in the house. Doesn't even do anything about League of Legends. He's just like, guys. You can't just leave mold in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Or no, you can't flush your noodles down the toilet.
And maybe this is the old man in me talking right now, but like I feel like we're getting up on the generation that's entitled to everything. They don't have as much respect for older people. I know old people have been saying that for a long time, but specifically, with League of Legends, when you have these kids who are elevated into these spotlight positions, you think that they're all that, right? They stop respecting the authority. They stop trying to learn from the old wisdom, right? And when you can be insightful and when you can understand, work ethic, right? It seemed like Link had a decent work ethic. It seemed like Afro has a decent work ethic, right? But when you can start understanding work ethic and respect for wisdom, then you start progressing a little bit better. But if you always think that you're the best and everything you say is the best, and you're a 19, 20-year-old kid, there's a reason that there are very, very few 19, 20-year-old CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies, right? Because there's luck and circumstance, but there's also a level of experience and wisdom that's required to position yourself in those roles successfully.
Yeah, and even the people that are CEOs and millionaires at 19, 20 years old, around them in their support staff, I guarantee you they are surrounded by a ton of older people with a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends which companies you're looking at. There are a lot of tech startups that jump up there and have a 20-year-old CEO, and everybody's their buddy from college. But if you see a CEO who's under 25 at a company that's been there for a while, then yes, his support staff is generally of some very aged veterans.
Yeah, very much, guys. So closing thoughts on sort of what we talked about with CLG. Anything before we move on here?
It's a saying that when Rome left Carthage, that they salted the earth, that they really just made it impossible for anything to grow. My opinion is, if you are leaving a team, don't salt the earth. You're not leaving a great precedent for yourself. You're not leaving a great precedent for the scene. Just, if you've got beef, just find a place to bury it. Like, if you need to get it off your chest, find a friend, find someone. Don't go to a stream. Don't go to Twitter. I know it helps to get it off your chest, but I promise you, a therapist will do a much better job consoling you than Reddit ever will.
Yeah, and I think it's this kind of thing of I don't really have a problem with Link saying anything or feeling this way or anything like that, or anyone really feeling this way or having a negative opinion about a teammate or anything like that. The only thing that I would say is you keep it in house and you discuss it within each other, and I don't think that that's a very not manly, but it's not a very professional and good way to go about it. Just bring it out in the public and let your dirty laundry air out.
Yeah, I would say that I think this is very insightful. I think as someone from the outside perspective, it's very, very interesting to read this stuff. I think a lot of people who want to get into the pro scene, if they're wise, they can look through this stuff and figure out a couple tricks, and figure out a couple tricks of things not to do. But that said, I agree with your statements that the old expression is, if you have a problem with somebody, talk to them first. If they don't accept it, then bring a buddy and try and talk to them together. Then, if they still don't accept it, if they're still being jerks, either you figure out how to drop it, or then you bring the congregation of people around. And so, in the same way here, it doesn't seem like all these problems were fully aired out with each individual person. And maybe if they were, things would have been okay. But only as a last resort do you blow things publicly. It seems like everybody's so quick to take to Twitter, so quick to take to Reddit, right? Exactly like what you said, Dylan. And I think that a lot of this stuff could have been curtailed or fixed. I think I saw a quote on, it was a response to Double Lift's Facebook page. What does it said? Instead of writing this when it is farewell time, you should all have talked about this when you guys were in a team together, right? But it says, but then again, and not wanting to be rude, you guys are a bunch of kids trying to work together. So it's everything we talked about. Couple shout outs in this thing. One in Link's letter. One is to Diggity. He mentions Diggity at the very beginning because he says, basically, I watched all of OSL, MSL from the beginning of time. And Diggity's my homeboy. I love that guy. Wish he was still around in the scene. The other one is Link mentions the Gigabyte Esports LAN, which I helped organize. So, we were an integral part of the scene. Long time ago.
I see where this section's going.
Yeah. Cable's taking over. Cable wants to talk about press start next. We're gonna
No.
So yeah, with all that being said, we've talked about that kind of a little bit to death, but good discussion there. I think we're gonna move on though to a little bit of Starcraft 2. So on May 15th, so it was last Friday, we had Flash coming back into the GSL. So he was knocked into Code A. He was knocked into Code A at the beginning of this year, and then he finally worked his way back into Code S for this season of the GSL. But he came in third place in his group. Went 1 and 2, 3 and 4 individual games. Didn't look overly impressive, and so Flash, the ultimate weapon himself, the Brood War legend, really not performing as well as people thought he would have in StarCraft 2. And I know he has the most up and down career in StarCraft 2, and people are expecting a lot from him. But I mean, what does his up and down sort of legacy in StarCraft 2 do to that scene? Is it important for the StarCraft 2 scene to have Flash around?
I think so. Coming from the tail end of the Brood War scene, and then also coming from the early StarCraft 2 scene when we had the elephant in the room, right? When are the Brood War people going to switch over? When they did, it was just a flurry of excitement, and it really, really excited the StarCraft 2 scene. But then, as soon as the elephants started to deflate a little bit, people kind of lost a little bit of interest. And we see a similar thing with Jaedong. Unfortunately, his results haven't been at the top of where I'm sure he wants them to be. And so if we have these guys who have the star power, who have the celebrity power, come back into the top level of the scene, I think a lot of people who used to be interested will come back. They'll be more interested to watch again. Hey, Flash is in. I'll check it out. Why not? That's cool.
Yeah, Dylan, what do you think?
So for me, I really do like a guy like Flash coming back in and being in the light, because a lot of what I think has plagued StarCraft is the fact that team branding has never been as strong as individual branding. So people are much more concerned about the individual players and their performance than, say, the teams or the brands that they are associated with. Like, you see a player win and you don't say it's a win for the team. You say it's a win for, like, say, Life. Life won the championship. His team didn't. Although ipso facto they did. So what you want when you're trying to create an esport is brands that people can associate with throughout the run of time. So, Life, this great Brood War champion, I mean, he set almost every record for Kespa about like single season winnings back in 2010. And now if he can come back and, grab some of his old fans to, jump on the bandwagon again and say, hey, it's Flash 2015. He'll make WCS this year. He'll get into BlizzCon. That just draws a whole lot of people back that may have dropped off for the time. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, we still haven't seen what the effect of Legacy of the Void will be to this audience, because that is going to be a massive update. And, from what I've heard from a lot of people, that this could be, a game changer as far as, attention to StarCraft. So if, maybe he holds out in this arena for a while, at least enough to get to that next patch and then see where that takes his game, it'd be interesting to see if he can kind of tread water for now until the big game changer comes in and then ride that wave.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's important to note too that, Legacy of the Void is going to be, as far as we know, the last expansion for StarCraft 2, so the game will finally stabilize. I mean, we've sort of been playing with the mindset that, like, yeah, we're going to have Wings of Liberty, we're going to have Heart of the Swarm, we're going to have Legacy of the Void, and so no one's really been able to stay overly comfortable, because every couple of years we're getting a different sort of completely different meta,
right.
Or completely different game, not just meta, but and I know that's the way people break down the eras of StarCraft 2. For me, it's a little bit different. For me, I break down StarCraft 2, it's in 3 different eras. So we have the beginning era where it's like the foreign hope, right? We think, okay, maybe foreigners can do it this time. So you have Huck, this is when Kiwikaki was really big, when Jinro was in
GSL.
Yeah, when Jinro was in the first season of GSL, like all that stuff, man. Like all of that together was just like the this groundswell where like everyone was on the StarCraft 2 hype train. That was the start of the whole esports resurgence in a way. And then the second part of that for me, the sort of middle ground of StarCraft 2 was when you started to have the big surge of Korean players at first. So that's when you had Nestea, MVP,
DRG.
Yeah, DRG, all that stuff going on. Lucira, Maru. All that stuff, and then the tail end of it, and sort of where we are now, is where the Kespa players all started to come in, and you started to see that huge push for just. I think that kicked StarCraft 2 up skill-wise in such a huge way, and it forced a lot of foreigners out of the scene just because of the amount of talent that the Kespa players were bringing into the scene.
Yeah, that said, would you say that your stage 3 kind of deteriorated the scene of StarCraft, though?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
Yeah, because I think the biggest, the most popular time of StarCraft 2 was the middle era, that before Kespa, but that GSL versus foreign era, where you had these gods, you had Nestea, MVP, Lucira, DRG, but outside of that, the foreigners could kind of compete and could take games and could take tournaments off of these players. It wasn't super overmatched. Now when you watch tournaments, it's like, yeah, there's Koreans and maybe like a couple of foreigners, but otherwise it's like Koreans and Scarlet, and then you're like, okay, that's about it.
Well, here's actually one of the things that's really interested me, and I think this will affect StarCraft as much as it does the native game that it's taking place in, which is Hearthstone, which Team Archon in their new tournaments, they're actually going to implement team-based winning and losing, which is interesting considering that Hearthstone is a very much mode? Yeah, they're it's a 1v1 game, but they're trying to bring the team aspect into it. And for me, when I look at esports and its health in general, it's always going to be healthier with teams and long-running brands. Teams and long-running brands are what's going to keep fans interested over long periods of time. Yes. When we talk about sports having fans, people who are sports fans are fans of teams before they're fans of players. If you're a fan of just a player and not really a team, you're usually just a fair weather fan. The diehard fans have some like geolocation, usually, that they tie into with a brand and that they hold on to forever and ever. Esports hasn't been able to get that geo tag in there. Like, sure, if I'm in North America, I'll root for North Americans in like a wider tournament. But when it's North Americans versus North Americans, it's harder.
So,
Leagues, a lot of league success has come from teams, and a lot of what I think CSGO's newfound successes right now is coming from the teams and brands that are really building out there, that people are attaching to. You know, the Fanatics, the Ninjas in Pajamas, they're all doing great stuff as brands over there. So I think the more we establish team brands and team games into StarCraft, I think that could potentially be something that really helps them going forward right now. Is, you know, building the teams, the roles, even strategy now of like, if say teams are 3-person teams going against each other, saying, okay, which 3 from our team are we sending out? What order do we want to send them out in?
Sure.
You know, you can develop a lot more intricacies into a tournament with team-based stylings than you get on the just straight bracketed 1v1 brawl amounts.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when you talk to Brood War players, and even in the Brood War scene, when you talk to diehard Brood War fans and even top Brood War players, every single one of them would say that in Brood War, Pro League was way more important than OSL or MSL. So like the individual tournaments did not matter to them as much as winning a Pro League with their team. And like that was the huge focus in that. Like the Brood War scene was gigantically based around that Pro League scene. And I don't know where we lost that, but
GSL Team League didn't really ever take off super hard in StarCraft 2, right? Like
no, I mean it was kind of relegated to the B team or like the B League kind of. Yeah, you watch this when regular GSL isn't on.
Yeah, but to speak to Dylan's point about Archon mode, I do think that's going to be a very interesting development. I'm very curious to see how that goes because, I mean, I've been trying to tell people in the scene and people at Blizzard and people for a very long time, let's try 2v2s. Let's just try it. Let's get some money behind it and see how this goes. And everyone, you know, the game's not balanced around 2v2 and it's not right? Okay, fine. That's fine. Why not Team Melee, right? Like Team Melee was in Brood War for a very long time. And we kind of brought it in with Micro Macro in StarCraft 2. I
love Micro Macro.
We never put it into real practice, right? And so that's what this Archon mode does. It's really just Team Melee from Brood War. And so, I mean, one of the coolest experiences with Team Melee that I remember reading about was that Flash would practice against... He would play Team Melee by himself with 2 people playing against him in order to practice against Jaedong. Right, so then, because Jaedong's micro was just so good. So then you extrapolate that into, you know, if we can get these incredible fights with, let's say, Jaedong and Flash on the same team versus 2 other people, imagine the micro that can take place there. And it's really, really cool. But then imagine the lack of teamwork that can take place too. If 2 people are trying to use the same armies, 2 people are trying to use the same money, and they don't communicate, and they get mad at each other, right? These are the dynamics that people find very interesting in watching team matches. That's why League or Dota is, you know, more dynamic, is because you have people yelling at each other. You have people making mistakes with each other. The team play's not there. The coordination's not there. And those kinds of things either make a team look amazing or make a team look like jokesters. And the same thing's going to happen with StarCraft. And I'm really, really happy to see it implemented. I hope it goes competitive to the top level. I hope that we can throw some money behind Archon mode instead of only 1v1 and see where that takes the StarCraft scene.
Yeah. I think the only tournament that's currently still running 2v2 is CSL. And I think like I honestly think that's the only league that I can think of currently that runs 2v2. And having casted and covered CSL for so long, some of those 2v2s are the most enjoyable thing to watch in the entire match. Actually,
you know, the scene that I love 2v2 the most in, and this is going to sound really weird, and it's going to piss a lot of people off, I love 2v2 in Smash Brothers. Because you can get some just absolutely amazing combos in Smash when you actually get the 2v2 battles out, especially when it's at the 2v1 mode. They just pinball some people, and it's absolutely fantastic. But nobody cares. Everybody just wants to see the 1v1 matches because that's where you get, you know, egos clashing. But the teamwork that goes on in Smash for 2v2s, fantastic.
Yeah, if you go back and you watch, was it this year? I don't entirely remember. But if you watch Kings of Cali this year, they had I think it was this year. There was the 2v2 team of Armada M2K, And every single time, first stock, as soon as you load in, they would auto kill someone. Like just straight, like they had a combo down where as soon as the stage would load, as soon as they could move, they were just a combo that they could just kill one person, take a stock. Didn't matter. And like that level of coordination and teamwork. Strategy, right? Yeah, because you develop that. They know exactly where to hit and how to throw and like what's going to get someone killed right away.
Yeah.
If
there was ever a player in Smash Brothers that would know the exact amount of time it takes you to land on the ground, start moving, it's going to be Mewtwo King. Like let's not lie about that.
No, and he's gonna teach Armada, and Armada's just gonna go, okay, and then just do it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, another reason that I think team play is very interesting for StarCraft, for Smash, for whatever is when you get together with a group of your buddies. Do you play 1v1s versus each other? No, you play groups. You play 2v2s. You play fours. You play free-for-alls. You play the fun matches, right? And so in Brood War, yeah, there was a big 1v1 scene, but in North America, the game was still extremely thriving and mostly on 3v3 big game hunters. As much as you want to say that that's a stupid map or worthless infinite minerals, whatever, right? Like you go on ladder on the BattleNet, every game you saw 3v3 big game hunters, 3v3 big game hunters, 3v3, right? And that's because that's what people have fun at. They want to play with other people. It's more interactive, and they can blame other people instead of blaming themselves, right? Like it's blame diversion. So if you can tap into a professional market of people of the same game mode that people like to play themselves, that's more engaging with friends and family, if you want to say it. Like my dad and I used to play twos with each other all the time in Brood War. So if you can tap into that at the professional level, I think it's going to have more longevity.
Yeah, and I think I think StarCraft just needs to shake up. Honestly, I think the game's getting a little. It's hitting the point that Brood War hit for a long time, where the gameplay is getting kind of stale, and there's not enough innovation going on. I think we've kind of hit a point where players have hit the optimization that they could hit, and we're not. And I don't think StarCraft 2 has the strategic diversity that Brood War had. I think the idea that. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this in the discussion that I've had with a lot of people is where where Brood War had soft counters to units and to certain compositions.
Right.
StarCraft 2 has hard counters. And when you have those hard counters, that means there's one optimal way to do something and one optimal response. Or maybe one or two. And as soon as you limit those options where you have those hard counters, sure, it's cool to have an answer for something, but it opens it up more when there's not a clear-cut best way to do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the way that StarCraft 2 is failing.
Patches, right? Like right now with StarCraft, we just patch everything out instead of letting it develop all the way through.
Sure.
There's pluses and minuses to that. You have to patch some things. I absolutely understand, but Brood War developed over time with very, very minimal patching. I think they changed turrets like 6 years after Brood War was released or something, right? Like what? But
yeah, very, very minimal. I think that's something too that a lot of players and esports in general just kind of have to learn, that it's not because something's in the game, it's not unfair. It's something that you have to learn to work around.
Yeah.
So like for League of Legends, something's overpowered, something's broken. There's always an answer. Like there's always a way to work around it. You have to be creative and work around it.
And even if it is overpowered, how difficult is it to execute? Let's take, for example, the Pudge fountain hook, right?
Oh my god.
That's one of the most difficult things to execute, but it's so cool. And when it happens, like, okay, yeah, they deserve that, right? Or what I've seen, there's a video out there of League. It's Callista Thresh Blitzcrank. Have you seen this?
Oh, where they pull them super far back?
Yeah. It's so awesome. Or they'll also do Vi. What is it? Blitzcrank, Vi, and Thresh, and they basically will triple flash and use the hook and the lantern and then Vi's ult to get to jump 3 screens worth of distance and just blow somebody up. These things are really cool and really interesting and unique to execute, and we never see enough of that stuff.
Yeah, and cool, like stuff like that would, like if you could pull off a Pudge hook every time, if you could pull off a Vi hook every time, or like that Vi combo every time, yeah, that's broken, you gotta fix that. But I mean, there's very few things in games, whether we're talking about League of Legends, Dota, StarCraft 2, even CSGO, there's very few things there that are immediate concerns that have to be patched out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are very few things. I think the game designers do a great job of working on that and reiterating. Yeah. I think the problem is that we're getting spoiled as gamers and as competitors.
Sure.
And honestly, yeah, sure. At a casual level, sure, I can understand. Yeah, okay, that's broken. It's not fun. But if you're a professional, you should not be complaining about balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of them grow tired of, oh, I'm playing this certain style of champion too much.
Sure.
Like a lot of people complained back when, a lot of people complain when it's a lot of tanks up in top lane in League of Legends, where it's like, oh, these tank guys who don't have a lot of ability to kill each other in lane. Well, it's kind of just the way it is when there's a certain expectation of this is the role that you're going to be filling in most of the competitive team compositions.
Yeah.
But then there's always a team out there that's going to say no to that. You're going to have the Vivisachi Poppy from Unicorns of Love. You're going to have top lane Fizz from Cali Trolls on Team 8.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those guys are actually pretty darn successful right now by going on a limb and doing some different things. Like Unicorns of Love made it to 2nd in Europe, and they played mid Varus against Fnatic and won. Yeah. Mid Varus. If you had told me Varus was going to be played in the tournament, nonetheless mid, I would have, spat in your face. I literally would not have picked it. But you know what? They are going out and they are being creative. And one of the best things was there was a talk show from Korea that Rainover and Huni were doing. I think it was CC Lol. And they were talking. They're like, we created 30 strategies for Unicorns of Love. We had 30 pick ban strategies. Not a single one of them worked. That they were literally so wild and creative. And you know what? That's their positive. That's something they have. The fact that they know what's meta. They obviously can list you. It's like, oh, here are the top 5 top laners, top 5 mids, jungles, so on and so forth. But they're going to say, you know what? If people are going to do this, let's play off of what we expect them to do. What are some of the things that we can do, off of this now? And if you're willing to take that risk, because it's a lot of risk, and yes, the community, if you do something like this and it doesn't work, the blowback is immense. But there is reward into it if you're willing to risk it.
Yeah. Right. Think about even let's go back to Brood War, right?
Back to the actual game we're talking about.
No. Well, I mean, no.
I think they're all connected.
I think League's very difficult because League is an infinite patch state, right? Like League is perpetually changing, and so I don't know how to really assess that. I still can't determine the positive negatives of that. I think it's actually a marketing strategy on Riot's part to keep the game ever flowing and ebbing, which is fine. But to your point about doing unique and different things, I mean, how far into Brood War did Bisu come up with Corsair Dark Templar, right? Yeah. Like, and it's because he chose something different and weird and unique, and he was rewarded for it. And the whole scene changed. And so, I mean, I know that State of the Game has talked about this 100 times, and other people have talked about this, but yeah, I fully agree, Dylan, that creativity and uniqueness and doing something wild can be successful. You don't always have to play to the meta.
Sure.
Playing to the meta has its worth, and sometimes it's the most straightforward way to go, but there's options.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, like, when the creative stuff comes out, it's usually actually not the Eastern countries that come out of it. It's usually a lot of the Western teams that come up with a lot of the creative stuff. Like, I look at Hearthstone, and the king of creativity was Kalento. Like, I mean, he was the first one to go out and say, hey, guys, we could go play rogue decks and, like, do 30 damage in a turn. And thus Miracle Rogue was born. And, like, a lot of really cool, fun stuff like that comes from, the creative people that are in a culture that accepts the fact of, oh, yeah, sure, do that creative thing. Don't just play the same thing 30 times over to make sure it's absolutely perfect to the exact like mouse click, which I think is something we do see a lot from the Asian teams. Yeah. So
I think they're Asian teams are looking for optimization and looking for the best possible ways for stability and success and for consistency. while where Eastern teams are looking or Western teams are looking just to win. Like Western teams just want to see what's the best way we can win this game, this one individual game. When Western teams are looking for what's going to give us the best consistency over time.
Yeah, I mean it's because they've professionalized. There's a lot of money behind it. Again, if you look at American pro sports, they do the same thing, right? How many times do you see NFL teams do flashy plays, right, or trick plays? They never do it because why not just play the standard play that they know has a success rate? That said, there was that high school team that always did onside kicks 100% of the time, and they won like some exorbitant percentage of all their teams, right? Like, so there's back and forths on it.
It's always interesting with sports, but then let's take a great example. Super Bowl. Pete Carroll on the 1-2 yard line has Marshawn Lynch and everybody and their mother is saying, let's do a running play. And Pete Carroll, to the strategist mindset, I still to this day do not fault him for passing. If I am looking at a pure analytical thing, saying
sure,
what is best in the long run, but your highest weighted play is still the run.
Yeah.
So he does something different from what everybody wants him to do. It doesn't work, and the pitchforks are out.
Yeah, you're right.
I think I just hit cable sore spot there.
That's everyone's sore spot, dude. So yeah, that game was frustrating, but yeah, we've kind of gotten off topic, but let's just jump back on to I guess we'll hit this last topic real quick and bounce out of here. But so we got TI5, the international coming up. The Compendium just got released. For anyone who doesn't know, the Compendium is sort of this add-on, sort of
smorgasbord of content.
Yeah, it's like a content package that Valve sells for the international. For every year as a celebration for the international, and as it hits certain goals of how much they've sold, so you can go. They're going to go ahead and add a portion of your of the Compendium, the Compendium profits. They're going to add that to the prize pool for the international. So last year it hit $15 million, and this year, as of right now, we have about 20 days left for the funding, and we're already at 8.5. So guys, where do you think we're going to end, first of all? Do you think we're going to beat out last year's?
Where were we at this point in time last year?
I'm not entirely sure. I was trying to look for that info. I couldn't find it, but if I remember correctly, it was about 6 or 7.
Yeah, I know where Wayback Machine and Reddit, because Reddit kept track every day of how much it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was about 6 or 7, because this is about a week in. And at the end of a week, I know it was about $1 million a day.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they'll reach 15. The end goal's pretty darn good. I think there are going to be a lot of people.
What's the end goal this year?
It's an axe comic with the new axe weapon to use in game.
That's awesome. Okay, I want that.
Yeah, last year's end goals were really nebulous and kind of fail, and they still made it to this end, or to 15 million. So if they have better goals, I think that it'll be better.
I should have the best thing. So guys, think of, if you don't know what the Compendium is, think of it like the international Kickstarter. Think of it like that.
Very much.
Yeah.
But keep going. Continue.
Well, I'd just like to say this is the most genius thing that anyone in esports has done as a money making train.
Sure.
Like, wow! Whoever created this and implemented it correctly deserves a 10% of every compendium that's made for the next 10 years.
I honestly think, and I've said this before, and I'm not scared to say it at all. I think the Compendium is the most important purchasable item in any game for esports ever.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Compendium is a way for the esports community to throw its weight around, to sort of, it helps the players out, it helps the tournament, it helps Valve get behind esports more. It helps get the word out about esports more, saying that this is how much the tournament's worth. I think it does so much for esports on so many different levels that, man, I just love the Compendium.
Helps Gabe buy more Lamborghinis.
Yeah, helps them fund Half-Life 3.
So I'm actually going to have to come in with a counterpoint here. I think the Compendium, when it was first announced, was the biggest Band-Aid that esports has ever seen.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah, Dota had a huge problem of kind of drawing it. Dota 2. Dota, never had problems with crowds.
No.
Dota 2 had problems drawing crowds. They needed a spectacle, and they had done the international before, and it was good. It was a good tournament, but it wasn't getting press coverage. It was constantly second fiddle to League of Legends, so it needed something to make it stick out. So Compendium comes along, and suddenly we have a tournament in the $10+ million range. You now have the most successful esports athletes of the year are your 5 Dota winners. Actually, even second place for the international are your next 5, which is great. That had its pros, but it's still a Band-Aid. There are still a slew of infrastructure issues with the Dota 2 scene right now that stem from, a lack of really Valve-sponsored tournaments that are, piecing together a season.
I think the number of tournaments, too. There's too many Dota 2 tournaments.
Yeah, there are too many, sideline tournaments. It's very hard to get a storyline that's, worth any traction going into this thing. And not to mention the fact that the off-season was so rife with roster changes that you just didn't really know what team was going to show up for the international by the time you were getting there. It made creating promotional materials for the actual tournaments incredibly difficult for anyone on the staff there when they were shooting, because it's okay, we're going to go with this guy's storyline. Suddenly, the team's completely different. Your storyline's changed, and I think what they're doing now with 3 majors on top of the international, they're doing roster locks. This is what's going to help Dota more than the Compendium. The Compendium's great. It's showy. It was great for media. But strengthening the infrastructure of teams and giving defined points in the season that fans can really latch onto, that's what's going to help Dota esports more than this big flashy cash prize.
Sure. But I would make the argument that the Compendium allows them to go back and fix the infrastructure. I think
it kept them alive.
Yeah, I kept it alive as long as possible to go ahead and let us fix this up. And to go to your point, I had to write I got commissioned to do a preview article for the TI4 and do a write-up on all the teams. And my lord, I didn't know half of the teams because they were completely new rosters that I had never even heard of. Newbie 1, right? And I had no idea of that roster. That roster was completely just out of my mind. So yeah, it's interesting to see how far Dota's come, especially when you kind of compare it to League of Legends, in the way that Dota 2 came out with the splash just because they had that. The first international was huge just because they had that $1 million prize pool, where I think the second biggest prize pool at the time was the MLG ones with 250K. So it was 4 times the amount of money that anyone had ever won in esports and stuff like that. It was a huge tournament. And then you take League of Legends that kind of grew out and grew its infrastructure first, and then came out with the big prize pools and came out with everything like that, and kind of grew into what it was. But yeah, I think
too, League of Legends has a protocol and procedure, right? You can say infrastructure, and infrastructure has a lot of encompassed within it, but I think protocol and procedures is what really took Riot Esports, League Esports, to a more consistent manner, right? It was one of the things I was going to say is that we've got these $15 million prize pools for the international, but unfortunately the Dota scene keeps declining. I run local events, I run LAN events, and I do viewing parties and stuff, and Dota, the community, the population, the attendance at Dota events continues to decline, unfortunately. Whether what that says about community or what that says about the health of the scene, I don't know. Given that we have these $15 million prize pools, is how much I would love to see the statistics of how much of this is coming from where in the world as well. How much of this prize pool? Because obviously there's multiple different currencies included that are converted here, but I know that SEA, huge. Dota is still the biggest thing in the world, in their world in SEA. I think it will continue to be. It's still humongous in China. As much as League of Legends is big in China, Dota 2 is still huge in China. So I'd love to see where this money's actually coming from, that then all gets premiered and featured in North America and United States esports. That'd be an interesting statistic, because community here is really needs help.
Sure, and I will give Valve a ton of credit for keeping the international in NA. It's very tempting to go ahead and do what Riot's doing and sort of bring it around the world and tour it to other regions that are maybe a little bit bigger, that they can kind of show off a little bit more and maybe get more press coverage and fan involvement. But I'll give them a lot of credit for leaving it here in NA.
Why, if I may ask, why do you give credit for that? Why is that a positive thing?
For me, I think that they understand that that North America is important to them. They know that North America is not the strongest scene, and that Dota is going to continue to survive in China and in Southeast Asia and stuff like that. It's not going to what you're going to gain from bringing it over there is not worth to them what you're going to lose by taking it out of North America. And I think that's an important thing that a lot of companies see the gain and they don't see the loss of the scene that they're going to go ahead and really cripple if they take it out.
No, that's very well said. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in general business and marketing as well. Like, why spend a ton more money on the stuff that's already working for you anyways? Why, use that money to try and develop other areas? It's always a balance on that in marketing. So I think what you said is very well said.
And I think the international, as much as the other tournaments don't, or the lack of big other tournaments is hurting Dota, I think that the international has really been a success here in North America. A lot of people cover it. A lot of news companies cover it. That really don't cover esports.
It's gotten a lot of attention to esports in general.
Yeah,
a lot of eyes, a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, curiosity.
Yeah. All right, guys. So before we close it out, what do you think when the international hits? What's the prize pool?
I say 15 million again.
Yeah, I think they'll cross 15. They'll have to add more stretch goals if I'm going to say anything, like in the 16, 17 range.
All right, I'm going to trust in Mr. Newell that he's going to put Half-Life 3 at the end of it, and we're going to hit 30 million. No, we're gonna go ahead because I think there's always a big push in the beginning and a big push at the end, and the middle is kind of dead. And we're starting to see that now. I mean, it was at 7 million a couple of days. It was at, I think, 7.5 a couple of days ago. And then it was climbing at like 1 million a day for a while, and so now it's just hit 8.5. So I think we'll probably hit, I'm gonna say 18. I think it'll be bigger than last year.
Well, I'm gonna make a very odd statement, a very grammatically odd statement, but what you said, what you just suggested about Half-Life is a very not stupid idea. The reason I say it that way is because Steam has put Dota 2 free to play as a draw, right? As a suction for people to come download Steam to play Dota, and then they will invest their money in all the other Steam games, right? So Dota 2, as far as Valve is concerned, is seen as a marketing tool. And so in the same way, if you were to put Half-Life 3 at the bottom of the compendium, you will get all the people in the rest of the gaming scene, not just esports, but the rest of the gaming scene, to give their money. And in the same way that DayZ made crap ton of money, right? The standalone version, even before it was an alpha release. That same way, you'll get all these people who are in general gaming, have no interest in esports whatsoever, to all of a sudden pay attention and be interested and invested in this Dota 2 international tournament because they want Half-Life 3. And there's going to be hype and fandom and circle jerking and hive mind. And so what you say is a very not stupid idea.
True. It'll never happen, but but I'm wondering how high they could put that number at the bottom of the compendium, and it would still fun. I don't think is there a number? Is there a number they could put that's not going to hit?
Wait, for Half-Life 3 you're saying? Or
yeah, if they put Half-Life 3 at the bottom of the compendium with a number, what
50.
Is there a number that they could hit? They could put down there that's not going to hit?
50, anything more than 50. I'd say they'd give 50.
Anything more than 50 million?
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't be able to cross the 50 mark. that would be the mental breaking point for a lot
Sure.
of people.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, if you go past 50, like it's the round off in fives, just mental trick with people.
Sure.
It's
Yep.
like, oh nope, that's after 5. That's halfway to 10. No, I just can't go over halfway to 10.
Yeah.
Logically, is
Yeah.
it that large of a step? No, but mentally, it's like this block for people.
Sure. Very true. All right, guys. So before we close it out today, what are we watching for the week? Any esports events they're curious about? Anything you're gonna be tuning into?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
LCK starts back up this week.
As is LMS.
Yep. So I'm watching LCK. We actually just had 2 teams entered in for the first time, so this was another expansion
Yeah.
for them. So they're out to 10 teams. And the reason I'm watching LCK right now is this is the second international tournament in a row that Korea has not won. This is the longest streak of Koreans not winning international events that I think we've seen.
It's the only 2.
Yeah, the only 2 back-to-back wins. So they've got something to prove now, and I think they have a mindset to lose, because what I watched the LCK qualifiers here, and what I'm seeing from a lot of these Korean teams, and it's something that I saw at MSI as well with SKT, is they have lost a lot of the ability to fight back when behind gold. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but they do it very passively. They don't actively go out and try and get ahead when they're down, which is, I think, something that actually helped Fnatic and especially Unicorns of Love when they play their games, is when they're down, they actively try and create situations to get back in the game. Whereas Korean teams will say, okay, we're behind, let's turtle up, try and get some gold, we'll drag this out into the longest game possible, wait for the other team to make a mistake, and then go on from there. As opposed to some of the teams from the West will say, okay, we're down, let's try and create a situation, let's do a Fnatic death bush, and just try and force a pick, get some gold for ourselves, and then try and fight our way back. So I think Korea has to fight a kind of stale mindset they've worked themselves into with their super high optimization, low risk style, that they have to start changing if they want to start catching up to China now.
Sure. And I would say, adding on to that point, the 2 teams that are probably the 2 biggest criminals of that problem are GE Tigers and Samsung and SKT.
Yeah.
Other than Faker, because Faker does try to make a play if they're behind. He does at least try to make a concerted effort to force something.
Yeah.
But I think those 2 are, especially with EasyHoon in there, those are the 2 teams that are the most sort
Let's
of
get a
guilty
Xerath,
of that.
Let's get a Ziggs. Let's
Yeah.
get Nazir.
Yeah.
Let's do everything we can to make sure that we can't lose this game at 20 minutes.
True. Very true. Cable, what are you watching this weekend? Or this week? What you got?
Kind of on a little break right now. I had a crazy weekend last weekend, but definitely WCS. It's still in group stages. I'll probably be watching some of that.
Sure. So yeah, I'll be watching all 3 of those. So I'll be watching WCS, LCK, LMS. Also, I do want to point people's attention to the CS:GO ESL Pro League. That's still running, and there's some great matchups this week. So go ahead and check that out. And we
should definitely talk CS:GO on the next episode, because CS:GO is very cool right now. Very interesting game development, and it kind of lagged at the beginning, I think, but man, the community is skyrocketing right now. We just had our event last weekend, and CS:GO had more people than League of Legends at our LAN event. So. And I've had that at multiple recent events where we featured multiple games. CS:GO people, they just like to come out and play. And I think the scene is just like, for whatever reason right now, I don't know, maybe we can figure that reason out by next week. But, dude, it's just skyrocketing. I love it.
I think it has a lot to do with streaming. There's a lot of League of Legends players and Dota players when these servers are down. They're not playing as much Hearthstone as they used to. They're playing a lot of CS:GO. And so you're seeing a lot. You're seeing like TSM did a full thing where they played CS:GO and yeah. So they're a lot of really popular streamers are playing a lot of CS:GO. So I think it's helping the scene quite a bit, getting people just kind of interested in seeing what's going on.
Yeah. Next week we should talk Osu esports too, because that's kind of a cool thing recent.
Yeah, Osu's kind of cool too.
You're gonna drag up Osu. Okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a thing, man. It's gonna be a thing.
Dude, we're gonna talk about Destiny. We're gonna talk about Destiny and Titanfall and.
Well, that's if you guys can drag me away from The Witcher. That's going to be the
Evolve.
About if the show goes off next week, it's going to be me sitting in the background over there just playing. It's like, Dylan, what are your thoughts?
Geralt, no. All right, guys. So go ahead, follow us on Twitter at KidLiquid at Cable SCES and then CCG_Pepitus. Also, just a shout out really quick. All of the art that you're gonna see from this channel is by Garrett Bernard. His Twitter handle is The Chateau. I'm gonna go ahead and put his link in there. But great guy, great graphic designer as well. So go ahead and give him a shout out. All right, guys. So we'll check you next week. Make sure to check out all that esports content, and we'll see you later.